Hi everyone. To the one person who may find this video, um, I thought about breathing a bit more life and creativity into this channel. Or rather, over the past week, I just got that urge to create something and speak into a camera and put it up online. Yes, you may notice, although I do try to keep my camera, my filming location relatively inconspicuous, that I'm in a new place. That's not something that I think I'm ready to discuss in this video, but it could be something that is very interesting for a further topic. Everything's fine. It's just a lot of things have happened in regards to travel and language learning situations. So previously, I have spoken on this channel about another one of my hobbies and things that I like to do, and that's reading. And I would like to discuss about a book that I recently read as well. Again, still trying to keep it within the language learning perspective. So I hope by the end of the video, you will sort of see how this book does maybe relate to people who are interested in language still. It's a fictional book, but I hope that you can still get something out of that. The book that I recently completed is a book called The Last Children of Tokyo by Yoko Tawada, and it's very small. Um, but it was a bit of a long read for me actually, and I will try to discuss that in a little bit. Some interesting things about this book and this author is that accordingly, this author um, is Japanese, born in Tokyo, then later went to go study German, and now writes in both German and Japanese. So that's very cool. We'd all love to get to that stage in a language that we learn. The story is generally, it has a plot, but I think the plot is not the most important part of the story. We follow some characters as they just go about their lives in a sort of post-apocalyptic Tokyo. The Last Children of Tokyo, I believe, refers to the current generation of Tokyo's children, who a lot of them seem to just be incredibly sickly and incredibly weak. And the older generation somehow are able to just live, potentially not immortally, but they live on and on and on. So we follow this guy called Yoshiro, who is the great grandfather of another character called Mume. So that's the relationship between him. The great grandfather is still running around doing chores for Mume. So there's a lot of exploration into certain topics. I think the best part about this book is the world that is painted, really. What it's like to live there, and all these kind of things. Why was it difficult for me to read? I guess because there's no chapter breaks. It's essentially just one big story. So it's kind, and like I said, it's not so much, there is an ending, and it follows a plot. But I honestly kind of was a little bit confused or dissatisfied with the ending, in the sense that I felt like there wasn't really one, or that it was quite abrupt. But I enjoyed the journey along the way. I enjoyed the world that was built, as I said. I enjoyed reading about these characters and how they are reacting to an environment that is very, very unique to us as readers in the modern day, in our timeline, I guess you could say. So what makes this book, I guess, special to language learners is, if you look on the inside here, there's a review that says, by Daisy Johnson. It goes like this: one of the most thorough and convincingly conceived worlds I have read. Definitely true. The Last Children of Tokyo shows a land tottering on the brink of disaster, but it is also a joyful exploration of language, a constantly surprising and exciting romp. And when I finished this book, I was holding it and I was questioning. I was like, why did I read this? What did draw me to it? And I think definitely, aside from the post apocalyptic explorations um, in the book, this phrase, a joyful exploration of language, really caught my eye when I was in the shop. So, how is language explored in this book? Um, Not to delve too deeply into it, but the story is set in Japan, in Tokyo, and Tokyo has sort of become. It doesn't have access to a lot of resources anymore. It doesn't have access to a lot of industry anymore, and things aren't doing great there. There is an island. I forget if it was the island of Okinawa or of Ryukyu, but essentially, aside from that, Japan has gone back to isolation. They have re-isolated from the rest of the world in response to unspoken apocalyptic or events that have happened in the world. And as a result of this, this plays a lot with language. One of the things that the government in the book does is they ban all use of foreign words. And I don't speak Japanese and I'm not learning it, but I kind of understood because even in um, our languages that we speak, we have foreign loan words. English has so many loan words from Latin and other languages. But it goes down even to the fact that the character Yoshiro, who goes to buy bread, and it's was previously referred to as German bread, so I assume it was like a European style bread. But they're not allowed to call it German bread anymore, so they have to give it another name. And there are things like this. I think they have to certain concepts like, I guess, denim jeans and all these things are redefined. They have to find, the government has gone back and found older words or created new words for all these concepts. So that's definitely one exploration that happens. And another thing that happens is we do see that a lot of words in the society are corrected. This may remind you of what's going on today, where nowadays people say that certain words that were fine to use 50 or even 10 years ago are no longer fine to use. And I think that the book handles this really well. I don't think you can really see that the author is trying to sit on the position one way or the other. I just feel like because the examples are fictional and a little bit extreme, that you know uh, you can't really maybe you won't get offensive or something like that. But there are things like when the character goes to school, when Mume goes to school, certain days like sports day are then changed to health day because I think the children, not all of them can play sports because of they have this apocalyptic condition where not all of them are capable of playing sports. And then eventually it's changed from health day to I think just fun day or something like this. This is not the exact example, but something to that effect. And there are other examples like um, towards the end of the story, the school children, they go to the toilets, and then they have this team of working great grandparents who come to clean the toilets after the children. And then the children say, like, thank you for your service to the grandparents. But then later on, they're corrected by their teacher because, accordingly, this phrase is used for somebody who is a wage worker. Like, if you pay them, you can say thank you for your service. But if they're doing it out of the kindness of their hearts or out of some community obligation, it's not appropriate to say thank you for a service. And I don't know if that is to reflect the current apocalyptic time or if that's something that makes more sense in the Japanese context. But all the same, it was really interesting to explore all these things. And finally, we all come back to Yoshiro, who at this stage is well over 100, maybe even, I don't know if he's 200 years old, but he's very old in the book. And he often talks about this word used to mean this, now it means this. I used to be able to say this word, but now I can't say this. And his great grandson, Mume, contemplates on this in his own perspective. And he says, like, oh, my grandfather has so many old words left cluttered in his head. He will tell me, back in my day, we used to say it like this, but you can't say it now. And Mume kind of sees this as sort of like almost akin to hoarding items or something like just keeping useless information. And he says, like, how does my my great grandfather operate with all these strange words floating around in his head that he can't use or that he's not allowed to use anymore? So there are some interesting, how shall I say, there are some interesting thoughts into the implications that various rules would mean for a society. And so we get to see that, and then we also get to ask questions about that and think about that. So I thought that these examples were very good for people who are interested in language because it gives you something to think about, and it's quite fun to read. That was definitely one of the more enjoyable parts of the book. There's a really cool scene where Mume, the child, he is playing at school, but because of his health, he can only really play for like a short time, maybe 10 minutes or half an hour, and then he just gets tired. He poops himself out. So he has a little sign that says, come back later. Hold on, what does it say? Yeah, it says come back later, as in like, so he walked past a shop one time and he saw the sign saying come back later. And the translation doesn't make it clear if that's a Japanese characters or an English character, but it's enough to be considered strange. And the kids ask him about it, and it says like, well, I don't exactly know what it means, but when I walked past the shop, it was closed and it had this sign, so I'm closed for now. And so that was interesting, a little interesting exploration into like symbols and language and discussion. And lastly, I'm realizing this video is gonna be, a little bit long, but one last comment I'd like to make is no, right now I'm not learning Japanese. However, in the past 2 years or so, most of what I've been reading has actually been, or half of what I've been reading, is actually Japanese fiction translated into English. So you have The Last Children of Tokyo by Yoko Tawada. Not sure if I want to read more of her stuff. I'm also currently reading now some Haruki Murakami. I read 1984 18 or 12 months ago. I forget if it was last year or like the year before. I'm reading another book of his now, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicles. There's an interesting Japanese book called Before the Coffee Goes Cold. And I cannot remember who wrote that, but it's essentially about a cafe where you can drink coffee and go back in time, but you can't change anything when you go back in time. So that's a series now. I've only fully read the first book, which again was very small, but I felt like perhaps because of the way it was written and then translated, or because of the fact that it is a fictional book, but it sort of delves into some deeper topics, I think I needed to take my time with it. I'm not sure, but that also took me a bit of time to read. And I have also bought a book by Kazuo Ishiguro, who is an author that I'm seeing a lot of his books around now. And I want to read this author's books as well. Currently, the book is Traveling. But I'll get into that as well. This sort of foray into Japanese fiction has been really fun because it's something different to what I'm used to reading, because firstly it's translated, so definitely there's going to be something different about that. And secondly, like I just feel that the way Japanese fiction is expressed, or how the language is written, or the cultural norms of literature in that society are different enough that when I pick up a translated book, there's something about it that feels different. A little stilted, a little comical, a little, here and there, a little awkward. But I kind of like that. And one of the things that I do appreciate about all the books that I have read is there is a certain attention to detail. I like the thoughts that most of the authors put into their books and allow us to think about through their characters. I like reading about the society of Japan and people who are growing up and living in there. And most of the Japanese books, this one especially, but also in some Murakami, they talk about the Japanese characters themselves. And, it might be on signs, it might be here and there. So, does this mean that I'm going to be learning Japanese? No, it doesn't. Um, but it's just interesting at this stage. It's very interesting. Uh, I know that a lot of people get into Russian literature and then they want to learn Russian. Unfortunately, most of the most famous Russian literature stuff is considered classics now, and unfortunately, I feel like I enjoy reading modern books more than classics, which is nice because I think Japanese literature, at least the stuff that I'm reading, fills that hole. I know a lot of people talk about learning Japanese because they like manga, because they like J-pop, they like the culture. But I think less people talk about the novels and books that are coming out now in regards to learning the language. So, those are my thoughts right now. Yeah, I don't have the time or the ability to learn Japanese to then read the books in their original language, but maybe one day. Do let me know if you're doing that as well. Might give me some encouragement. Okay, thanks for hanging out with me for my ramblings / book review. And who knows, maybe I'll see you sometime in the future. Bye.